All right, there we go. Hi, everyone. It's Sarithkin and Ansteorra, and I'm here with Duke Hoegaarden, who's living in Ansteorra now, but reigned in the Outlands. And I'm excited to talk to him because he reigned, I think, in 2003, 2005.
Uh, sure.
Sure.
It's been a while, so it's
Been a while.
kind of I don't know. I think that's about right.
Okay.
That sounds good. It's been a while.
Okay. Well, we usually start these with you giving us your origin story. So why don't you start there, like where you found the SCA and when and why and all of that stuff.
Uh, I found the SCA out behind a comic book store. Is the we were gaming with some friends, and there's a gentleman who is Sir Tigger out of the Outlands, and he said, "Come on, we're going to try some stuff." And we've been playing all the different games, D&D and whatnot, and we went out behind the comic book store, and he had all this old sweaty stuff that smelled bad, but we put it on anyway. And the first thing was Duke Albert, who reigned in the middle in the 70s, and then again from the Outlands when it was still Belt. So that was my first person to first putting on a helm, and the first thing he did was a nice shoulder pump fake and hit me right in the leg. And
well, that's not nice.
you broke my Tic Tac box. And I'm like, that's awesome. And then, so instead of being upset, I'm like, that was the coolest thing ever. And so we kind of jumped in at that, and I went to a couple of different practice and stuff. I think my very first event was Johann and Monica's coronation, the Black Duke, many moons ago. So, but I just kind of jumped in, and it's been the best for making friends and growing in leadership skills. I mean, I think that's one of the things a lot of people don't realize, that it has helped me out career-wise, being able to do a lot of public speaking and that sort of stuff. But it all started out behind a comic book store on a Saturday when we ran out of games or something. Somebody got bored and said, "Hey, let's do this." And I'm like, "Oh, it sounds good." And what's funny is I think Tigger you'd have to ask him. He was like a squire for 30 years. Something like that, something crazy.
Was it just the two of you back there fighting?
No, there were a couple of other people that were back. I think there were about four of us, but I think the other two were kind of inactive and not for a long time. But we all kind of started. They had been in for a little bit longer, but that was how we all got started. And so what's funny is with Tigger, he got me started in the SCA, and I got him started into teaching. So we joke about that. He got me rolling in one career and there were one path, and I helped him out on a different path later on. So now he's a principal in Pueblo, Colorado.
Wow. Yeah, that's one of the coolest things about the SCA is all the networking and how you can help each other in different ways outside of the society. So, so did he help you get your armor together?
Yeah, I think we banged it out. It was ugly. It was very, very ugly. I think my first armor, they called me the Green Pickle because I bought some stuff at the Salvation Army and made it into this long vest, and it looked like this. It was kind of ridged, so it looked like a giant pickle with a belt and a great helm, and I wasn't very good. But I made up for it with enthusiasm and having a good time. It didn't really matter.
What weapon form did you start with?
I think we trained a lot in the very beginning with the sword and shield, just so you know how to do it. But I think I started out when I actually went and fought in some tournaments after a little bit, fought Florentine for a little bit. And then I did a class with Duke Sirith. And he kind of showed some things with Amadu, and I know Amadu is the evil thing, but I took to that. I was an athlete. I wrestled in college, so it worked for me. So footwork was important to be able to. It's more of dealing with feints and making your opponent move where you want them to move to make it so it's a lot easier for us old people. Um, show them the cheese and then hit them where they step, and it's all good. So, but I think a lot of that was a lot of stuff. And I had a knight, Haroon, and he did a lot of just travel. So it was just get in the van and go. So I got exposed to a ton of different things early on. A lot of great people. You know, we had a bunch of people that were all kind of new at the same time, and so we all kind of grew up together. And then a lot of us were ended up being knighted. I can remember, you know, fighting in a tournament, and it was like that. What is it? A year or less tournament, and it was like Duke Bela, myself, Sir Akira, Sir Reese, a bunch of people who were eventually knights, and none of us won the tournament. So it was spectacular. I think the person that won the tournament didn't fight anymore shortly after that, but we're like, having a good time.
So did you end up squiring to Faroon? Is that?
Yeah, I was Haroon's squire for a little while. I've lived in the middle of nowhere more than a couple times. And then I came back and lived in Denver for a while. I started out in Colorado Springs in the barony of Dragonspine, and that's where I met everybody. And then eventually came back to the barony of Cairta there. But it's kind of the whole family thing is kind of neat for me, because it turns out that Duke Albert was kind of at the top, and he had a squire who became Duke Olaf, who had a squire who became Sir Haroon, who had a squire who was me, became a duke, and then I had a squire, Duke Conan, and then he's got a squire that became a knight as well. So you get multiple tiers of generations. So it was kind of fun for me at my knighting. You know, I had Duke Albert speak for me, and I had Duke Olaf speak for me, and then I had my knight speak for me. So that was kind of our family at that time. Not that we really talked about it. It was more of after the fact. Like, so now it's a pretty sizable family tree with a lot of great people in it. You know, so it's kind of fun when you do a lot of that research. I know a lot of stuff was done, you know, by the Kingdom of the Middle and in the West with people doing a lot of those family trees. And then I built one for the Outlands when I still lived there. And when I moved to Ansteorra, I built one for here too. So just to see the relationships of where everybody kind of fits in is kind of fun.
Do you have those published somewhere? I think that's super cool.
That's a great question. I know that they were on the Ansteorra and Chivalry page for a little while. Shortly after I wrote them, they did a good job of putting them in code, but then I couldn't help anymore because I didn't know how to do the code. But the tree part was all kind of done, and they've kind of added to that. I know the Outlands is still out there somewhere, and a lot of people have added on to that for a time. But I think those kind of things are kind of fun. At some point in time, I have this project in my head. It's been there for way too long, and it should probably rattle out at some point in time. It's like when you get that free time, I'd like to build some kind of a sunshade that has, you know, the big lineage and everything like that on it from everybody. And I think that'd be fun.
That would be super cool. I'm working on something for my grand knight where I got a shield, and I'm painting his family tree on the shield with him at the bottom, and then all the branches with all his knights, and then all their knights. And it's been a longer project than I thought.
It gets pretty bushy.
It does, doesn't it? And then as I'm working on it, people get excited and have to add them in somewhere. So yeah.
Yeah, you got to squeeze them in. And I started out, and I actually had all the squires too, but then I had a couple people that had like 17 squires. I'm like, okay, I got to cut this back a little bit.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm like, I never heard of half of these people, and neither of anybody else. So, but they were there for a little while.
Right. If they're not still active, maybe they don't get included because it just gets overwhelming. But tell me how you met Haroon and how you hooked up with him and why you chose him as your knight.
You know, I think it's funny. I wrote in a journal in my first couple of years of the SCA. I kept a journal of everything. And I was thinking, man, I was going to all these events, and I was looking at my journal. Well, there was 3 months between this event and this event. So I was thinking I was going to all these things. And in truth, it was nothing like later on when it becomes more of a lifestyle. But I think I traveled with them a couple times, and I went off to teach in Northeast Colorado. So I was about 100 miles or more away from the nearest group. But I would come back and still come to events. And then once I can't remember whether it was before I moved back or after I moved back, but we're both kind of smart asses. So I guess our a sense of humor matched out pretty well. So it's one of those things that when you get along with all of family, it worked out well. It's just who I happened to travel with and who I enjoyed spending time with. So, it would be get in the little van and we would go all over the place. And like we went out to an event out in Idaho called Uprising and in Artemisia, and that was such an eye-opening event for me. It was that first venture into just a nice event. And I think you'll probably ask me this question later about my favorite event, if you throw out the wars and, Gulf and Australia and everything else. The people in Artemisia are just phenomenal. And it's funny because I talked a little bit about, the relationships at that time, and a lot of us were squires. I mean, everybody but Sean, I think Sean was like 12 and a night or something like that. And we were all older and hanging around and just talking about everything. But a lot of the people that you have interviewed or you are interviewing, in Artemisia, we were all squires together and we kind of grew up. And then you throw in North Shield at the same time. There was a little triangle there where you had Northern Outlands and North Shield and Artemisia, and we were all going to each other's events and just having a great time and just seeing everybody kind of move forward in that was such a fellowship, Timmer is in that group, and there's just so many good people. I mean, I could tell a lot of stories about Timmer. Maybe I shouldn't, though. I know that one time we used to go. I used to go out. We'd go out to Artemisia probably at least twice a year, And one time we were out there, so going to stay at Timmer's place, and they were still out doing something. And we got to the house a little earlier than planned, and we're calling him up, and he's like, "Hey, we're at the club. We'll be there shortly." I'm just like, don't worry. I'm just I'm stirring a drink with this sword over here in the corner, and I'm describing it, and it's like the Loch Salon sort of state and stuff like that. And it's like, what? I'm like, just because it's sitting there and I can see it. But I think, working with each other and bringing styles forward and back from other kingdoms, Artemisia was really good at more of the authentic historical look. And I think that kind of spread to the Outlands, where we were just a bunch of wild, I don't know, long-haired, skinny people. I'm not either of those anymore, but at the time, it was like all the dukes from the Outlands were all, long, blonde, skinny-haired guys. And now Hrothgar still looks good, but I don't know about anybody else. I got a little dirty somewhere in there.
Yeah. Artemisia is great. I love visiting there too. I've been to a couple uprisings. It's a nice, friendly event. They're
most
great.
of the time, except for the time when Duke Sean he legged me and then pushed me into a cow patty. That was not so nice. I still owe him for that one.
All right.
But I laughed hard. We had a lot of fun, and it was one of the sites was like we would go out in this cow pasture, and we were doing a lot of melees, and somehow I got legged, and he just kind of knocked me over right into a cow patty while I was wearing like the Queen's Guard tabard, so I had to run and wash it off in the little creek and everything else.
Oh, that's terrible. So you said that you fought mostly Madu. Why do you think that Madu is so socially acceptable in the Outlands and like other kingdoms don't like it? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, like why there's this weird cultural thing about that.
Well, I think anywhere you go where people have success, you will see more of that in areas like in Ansteorra, when I came here, the people that had reigned previously had these big square shields. So a lot of people all fought with big square shields. In Artemisia, it's more of a heater kind of place a long time ago. And Outlands had some success with Madu, so that was big for a little while. I can remember pockets where someone from Sir Dietrich came from Callantyr up into Unserhofen, which is northern Outlands, and he fought with a spear, like a 6-foot spear and a sword. So in that pocket, all of a sudden everybody was fighting with that style because that's what was successful. It's not necessarily that it's more culturally acceptable. It's more that I think people picked it up because they saw them being successful. I think no matter what style you choose, every style has pros and cons. I can beat Madus with a sword and shield without any issue, and anybody can do it if they, if you pick one up and fought with it for a little while, you kind of understand where everything's got strengths and weaknesses. In the end, it's going to be skill that wins. It's your ability to feint and create movement that will do what needs to be done. It's not having all the extra bonusy things. It's not like a Swiss Army knife of shields, but well, maybe it's a little bit. But I think because it was successful and people were successful with it.
Yeah, I think it sort of does some of the Western kingdoms a disservice that we discourage it so much, because when we see it in other places and we have to fight it, we're not used to it. So it's just a weird cultural dichotomy to me that that for some reason it became evil out west. Anyway, I wondered if
I think in the Outlands too, the Outlands has a lot more of a mindset of fighting multiple weapons. Like I would go through a fighter practice and I would fight 1 round sword and shield, 1 round Florentine, 1 round with Madu, 1 round greatsword. I'd even go out with Florentine daggers, and I had them all set up what order I would do it in. So it really didn't matter who I was fighting with. I just followed that order. Now I got smoked a few times when I was doing Florentine daggers. Is great for learning how to block and move your hands. But every now and then it's not the most brilliant idea. I think I did one in Amina's Mother. I went out 1 round with Florentine daggers, and Jarl Gunvald, the first crown of the Outlands, kind of folded me over a glaive and kind of tossed me with his weapon off the field. I might be exaggerating that a little bit, but at least I blocked it, but I took it because it was awesome. Yeah. It's like but I think there's a little bit more acceptance there, just because a lot of people take that stuff out. And I did that a lot when I came to Ansteorra. I was down in Austin for the longest time, and there's some great people down there, but I like to mix it up, and that my Madu's not even my best weapon style by even, it's not even close. I like 9-foot spear. I think that's what I like melees a lot more than tournaments. But I also like 6-foot glaive. I got a great weapon. It was a gift by Count Kassan. It's the only sword I have that has a name, and it's called Detention, which is perfect for a teacher.
That is perfect. I love that.
So I still fight with that. It's a beast.
Yeah, that's fun. So when you were moving through the squire ranks, how were you training? Like how many practices a week, and were you doing pel work or slow work or?
I'm a little bit odd in that I shouldn't say this, but I've never worked at Pell. Young people, if you're listening, go work at Pell. But I was in Denver, and so I could get to practices in Colorado Springs, Dragonspine, Boulder, Fort Collins, and a couple of. So I was fighting 4 times a week plus on the weekends. And so, but I was training, I would focus in my practice on working on shots, not necessarily fighting an opponent, but working on shot selections and doing the same thing that you would do on a Pell. I was working with a lot of different people that I would fight. We had a gentleman that came and lived in Denver for a little while. You may have heard of him, Duke Spider, out of Trimaris. I think he came in, and Bela squired to him, and but there was a few of us that did some training with him in practices, just a warm-up drill, a series of that. And I still use that to this day when I'm teaching others how to begin to train. And I think that mindset of you can use a fighter practice very much like a moving Pell, and doing a lot of active passive drills where one person is just defensive and the other person is offensive. So you still have to maintain good posture and good footwork, but realistically, that's where you learn the keys of arm angle. I can throw the same shot 16 different ways just by changing where my elbow comes out of, and I can adjust it mid swing. So those kind of things come from doing those drills live and not necessarily and being reactionary. So there's something to be said. If you can get into a place where you can go and practice a bunch, then that's great. But if you can't, work the Pell.
Right. Was there like a particular warm-up drill that you guys would do that you would like to share?
It was really simple. It was just active passive, and always starting out with 5 offsides, and you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the last 3 were a little bit faster, and then you go offside 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then take turns. But your move, as you get better at it, if you're a beginner, you're just standing there throwing your shots. When I'm working with someone brand new, I love doing that, by the way, just to get them to understand, okay, how hard you need to swing, what the mechanics are to get, you don't have to do all chop and wood, but just the movement of the hips and the elbow are critical components. And then from there, you're working on your combinations, any combination of 1, 2. So you can go flat snap, or offside, or any combination of that, however you want to do, and do 5 of those. And then after that, it's a return fire. Like I get to throw it, you're coming and then blocking. So you get that mindset. And that's just a warm up. And how everybody says, hey, you want to warm up? I'm like, yes, I do. And I'd like to do it this way.
Yeah.
So I think that was just the mindset.
Yeah, I think warm-up drills like that are great because it helps you figure out a whole bunch of different things and in an active environment. So that's super cool. I like that. So how long were you squired before you got knighted?
I don't really know.
You don't know? Okay.
No, I don't have any pictures of when I was squired, so I really can't put my finger on when it happened. I know where I was, but I don't know what year I was. I fought for a while before being squired, so I had gone out and done a few things, and I think I was probably squire for maybe 4 or 5 years, somewhere around in there. I think I started in like 91 and was knighted in 98. So somewhere in that time frame I got squired. But we had traveled. I mean, before I was squired, I think we traveled together a lot. So I was pretty much, kind of one of his guys.
Yeah. So tell us about getting offered and getting knighted.
Let's see. I was offered in Nebraska, the very small chunk that's part of the Outlands out there, a very small place that we had gone out. So it was kind of neat because a very small shire, and we had gone out there quite a bit and had a lot of good friends. And so I was offered there at a very small event, but the people there knew me from coming out there. I think it's one of those things where I had some success as a squire, and traveling out to Artemisia quite a bit. There were some things that they came, and I think they probably sat in some circles on my behalf, just to try and get the ball rolling on some of that, just because of the brotherhood that we had. And then I was knighted. I actually had 2 vigils. I had one in the northern part, and then one at a crown tournament that was more of an official stay up until the sun comes up, a little more pomp and circumstance on that one. But then was knighted at a crown tournament by Hrothgar Madigan.
Oh, cool.
So I don't think there was anything special. It was kind of fun to fight in a white belt. It was kind of neat. Everybody was super. I think my ceremony was fun because I had, like I talked before, I had Duke Albert, who then talked to Duke Olaf, who talked to Haroon, and then he released me as a squire. And then later on, that continued even beyond me. So that part was, I think, more memorable. But I think in the first vigil they had, I was visited by the 7 deadly sins. Well, technically, I was only visited by 6 of them because Sloth was out partying and he never made it. And that is a true story.
Really?
So that is totally true. So
tell me about that, though, because I've never heard anybody visited by the sins before. So what was that about? Was it a joke? Was it like
I don't know. I think Duke Malgwin set it up. And they all had these stones, and I had this basket, so they were coming to talk to me, and I had to figure out who the deadly sins are, and so I had someone came in and flirted. I had someone offer me all sorts of food and drink, and someone who came in angry and thought once I was a knight I should go wreak havoc. And so it was kind of interesting. It made it kind of fun. I carried those stones around for a long time, so it was kind of neat. But yes, the gentleman by the name of Duncan was out drumming for the girls at the campfire drinking and never made it in. So Sloth didn't make it, and I think that made it even more perfect.
Yeah, totally. That's really cool. So before you got knighted, were you fighting in crowns? Is that a thing in the Outlands?
I think so. I did. I fought in probably quite a few. I was typically as a squire, probably your 4th place finisher or 5th place finisher. I did okay. I did about the same as a knight for a little while, so I fought in plenty. But I only made it to the finals twice, so I guess I did okay. And I apologize to Duke Gunther of Ansteorra because we were at a crown tournament, and he finaled, and he's like, what? He was bummed out that he didn't win, and he goes, oh man, at least I can say I fought in, I can't remember the number, like 10 different finals. And I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. I've only fought in 2. And he and I didn't realize at the time, it was like, oh yeah, you're okay. I'm sorry, my bad.
Yeah, sometimes.
But I think that the two that I won, the 2 that I won were with Arton and with Bela in the finals. So good fighters. Now I don't remember anything from my first crown final. I remember fighting in the earlier rounds, but I got to the finals and I had to win. It was best 2 out of 3, and I had to do it twice, so I had to beat him 4 times. And I know that I beat him 4 times in a row, but I don't know how I did it. I don't know what I threw. I don't remember any of it. But then the second time, I fought Bela, and that was fun. We got to laugh, and it was a fun fight. So and maybe I can remember better because there's actually photos or video from that. I don't think I have much from my first one. And maybe that when you get old, you rely a lot on, oh yeah, there's a picture of that, and yeah, that happened.
Yeah, things sort of
But it's
blur
probably a
together.
good thing that they didn't have photos of a lot of things that we did, so I got a few of those stories too, but that was one. We might get to that later. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Okay. So you
I
have
got
to
to tell
give,
one. I got to tell one story.
okay, go for it.
So I got to tell this story. So because I don't know, I'm kind of squirrely. I have a good time. This game is a game, and everybody needs to remember that. When I go to Gulf Wars, when I first moved down here, uh, Ansteorra and Trimaris totally sucked me into just having. We just have fun. Period. And so, like, they made a rule in the treaty every year at Gulf War that Hoagie could fly. It was always a side rule because I would just do different things, and somehow it happened. I don't know how. We were we were in some type of town battle, something where you go back in Resurrection, and I don't know why it came to me at that time, but I had a 9-foot, and somehow I was on the shoulders of the Callantyr general as we marched back out after resurrecting. So I'm on his shoulders, and so I'm like, and one of the marshals was like saying, whoa, stop, oh, stop. And then the head marshal Perdrug, and he's been known to do this a couple times. He goes, it's okay, it's Hoegaarden, just watch this is gonna be hilarious. Because it always was, and I don't know how. So we're getting up to the front lines, and everybody's freaking out because I'm on his shoulders, and I'm throwing shots from this 9. And all of a sudden, from the corner, I hear, and I look over, it's Baldar. Kill the horse! Kill the horse! And the next thing you know, and we just crashed and crumbled, and it was pretty epic. Not a lot of people can say they've done those, but I think I have a bunch of those kind of stories. Like I like asking the marshal, "Hey, can I jump over the fence?" At the Gulf War, there's that big fence on the wall, because usually you had to have I don't know, a plank or a something or a different rule, and they're like, "No, you can't do that." And it was Perdrug, of course. So it's like, "Oh, wait a minute, hey, go ahead. Let me get where I can get a better view." So kind of catapult myself over the fence, and next thing you know, that we're getting charged because they're like, "Oh," and it was Bytor on the other side, so they're sandwiching. I mean, it was just a lot of fun. Maybe not 100% safe, but it was like 97% safe, so it was okay. But
97%
just
is
lots of,
good.
I think the brotherhood, the sisterhood, whatever you want to call it, of the SCA, when you travel and you go to those places. When I was younger and coming up, it felt as though there was always this kingdom doesn't like this kingdom, and there was kind of this animosity that existed. I know that Outlands and Atenveld felt that way growing up. I don't know whether it really was, but by the time I got there as Crown, it was completely different, and we all got along. And now it is such a different feel when you go to a war, and both sides just absolutely love fighting each other and laugh, and then it's just like we're told, we fight all day long, and then we drink about it, and tell stories later, and that's how it should be. And I think that's true in a lot of places now. That I think that travel, and I think social media has really made it a lot easier to stay connected to those people that are from other places and far away. I mean, I haven't been very active because of work, but I still follow and can see everything that everybody's doing. And some of those fools are still winning crowns. I don't know why, but just having a good time vicariously through other people, and it brings back good memories, which is why I love the video series so much. Is just because you get to see those people. You're like, oh yeah, I remember this story. And yeah, you hear some of the stories like the one I was telling you about earlier. I'm like, I wasn't expecting that, but I know exactly what happened. And I have a completely different perspective of what may have happened. So it's kind of fun in that regard. But I think that, growing up, the way to become a knight was you would find yourself on the field at Estrella, or even later on in the fields of Gulf Wars, doing pickups and pickups. And I can remember, before I was knighted, or it might have been before I won crown, I can't remember which, but being out there until it was almost dark and looking over, and there's Edward from Ayton doing the same thing, and he won crown, doing the same thing. Sometimes it's just fighting different people so you have a different perspective from all angles, and smiling the whole time. I think that's, people say, oh, you get really serious. I'm like, no, I'm uncomfortable if I'm serious. I might have a shit-eating grin while I'm in the finals and laughing, and I'm much more comfortable in that environment than I think there's a bit of focus, but I think you have to love what you do, and you don't have to worry about whether you win or not, as long as you're having a good time. I've had plenty of great fights that I didn't win necessarily, but I think with that, winning crown and such, that comes with a lot of responsibility, so you have to take that very seriously. But in terms of when you're going to foreign events, it's all about just having a good time and teaching each other. I learned a lot. I think a lot of people will learn from Sean, but out in Artemisia and Basel and a lot of the great people there. But I think it was kind of a two-way street, with a lot of different people, and learning from each other and making each other better. And I think travel really helps that. I think knowing what events are happening and getting information out now on social media makes a lot of that way more possible than back in the day of looking in a newsletter and trying to figure out where the directions were.
So I know a question that one of my squires asks me a lot is, how do you make yourself memorable on the field to people? What would your answer be to that?
I think you have to have fun. You have to be willing to laugh. You have to be clean. No one wants one of those, but I think, and you have to be willing to listen. There have been so many people that someone would say, hey, come fight my squire, come fight my guy, or you need to go fight this person. So when you get that guidance, you have to take advantage of that. Like, I fought some people and got some feedback, from cirrhosis from the middle, at an Outlands prize tournament at Estrella, Duke Guy, from Kaid, all sorts of different people that someone has said, hey, go fight this guy. But you're memorable because you come back and you get better, and you come back and you come back and you come back, and you have joy. I think joy is probably the most underrated. If I'm fighting somebody and they're giggling, I want to fight them again someday. And sometimes people get the best of you, and it's okay. Like, I'm sorry if I tell a lot of stories. So
no, I love the stories.
It's Estrella, and I'm in the shower truck, and someone is in line behind me, and they're telling the story of being on the field that day and fighting against me. So you're just kind of laughing because I remember the fight, and I'm telling the story later. I'm like, I threw this rap, and I must have hit like both cheeks so well that he dropped down to the ground and dragged his butt on the dirt trying to put out the heat. And I don't hit hard, but it must have been a good one. But and then you tell the story, and then my knight Haroon is like, oh, wait for this one. So I'm fighting this guy, and I hit him in the head, and I hear this ting de-ling 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 de-ling. Hold. He's like, what is that? What happened? He goes, hang on. You knocked my glass eye out. I got to get it out of my armor and put it back in. I'm like, I don't know how you top that story.
You don't.
So I think this that what we do should be fun. It should always be fun. And I have tons of stories because we traveled and we took the time to get to know people. My favorite thing to do is to go and bring in all the new people. When we did Gulf Wars, I called it the Magical Mystery Tour. And I promised all the people in Ansteorra that were new, I would take them around and we would go, oh my gosh, we would go to, you know, Trimaris, then we go to the middle, we would go all over the place and just go to the different places that I knew and introduce them to people. So it was for, you know, it's easier if you're a fighter, you can meet people out on the field, but other people knew you have to bring them in too, for the whole experience. And, you know, and it got to the point where I had all sorts of people who've been around forever that they wanted to be part of the tour too. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, you know, we would do, we did lose a Duke doing that once though. He hurt himself on the stripper pole and couldn't fight the next day at Bytor's camp.
The stripper
I won't
pole?
mention his name. Well, yes, if you've ever met Duke Bytor, he always had something that he built, like a rose garden or a giant ship or a tavern attached to a go-kart. So it's a portable tavern. And we hung out a lot together. But for some reason, he had one of those. And of course, I think Maisie and Trimaris, she's a lot of fun and invented some kind of a shot where you squirt lemon in your eye. And I don't really know how that happened, but he liked that. And so he did that a bunch and they ended up on this. I mean, the stripper pole was just a joke, but he was actually working it pretty well. I didn't have any dollars at the time. Otherwise I would have jumped in on that one, but he couldn't get up the next day. But we won't mention who that is though.
That's a good party when you can't get up the next day.
No, that's against the rules. You can stay up until the sun comes up, but you still got to put armor on.
Right. I love the Magical Mystery Tour thing though. I might have to snag that. Like we do a lot of traveling when we can, right? Like now nobody's traveling, but I think like actually having like a name for it and like, you know, having people that you always take might be a kind of a cool thing to do. Just put everybody in the minivan and go. So
well, and we made it up one year, and then they asked if we were going to do it the next year, and we're like, heck yeah, that was such a good time. And we did it at Gulf Wars, and you've got the Green Dragon there, so that's kind of a neat place to go. And I would always work one night at the bar for them, so I think there's glory in service, and especially if you're doing it while drinking, it's even easier. So but just a lot of different things and different people. We would tell them we were coming by, and so we would pick a night and figure out what was going on. So we would plan it out of our stops along the way, and we would say, hey, if you've got other people that you want to bring, by all means. And you know how you get those mob parties where you just go from place to place, and then it's like, okay, here we go, we're going to the next place. And then we lose some on the way and we gain some on the way, and it didn't really matter. We were having a good time. Yeah. It's a good way to meet people. And, sometimes that the phrase peer fear drives me crazy, because we should be the most welcoming people, in the SCA, because we know what it took to get to where we are. And I don't know too many people that were able to jump in right off the bat and be uber successful, without a little bit of pain here and there.
And it is part of our job to facilitate relationships. I mean, that's part of our job, and we should be doing that. And to do that, we should be approachable. So.
Well, I think, we come from all walks of life as far as employment and everything. But I think those people that have had an opportunity to serve, like as a landed baron or baroness, or as a crown, you get a lot of free training as far as leadership skills and communication skills. I reaped massive advantages for all of that in the education field, so I can speak, anywhere now. I've done conventions and stuff like that. And now I'm a superintendent, so I can't go any higher there either. But and just managing people. So you learn the ability to, and this is what I'm going to, a quote that I use in education is that anything is accomplishable. You just have to be willing to pay the rate for that achievement, whatever it is. So if you want to do this, yeah, it takes a little bit of work. If you want to do this, it takes a lot of work. So as long as you're willing to pay the exchange rate, you can achieve, but it takes that. You can't be a yabbit person. You have to be a listener. You have to be willing to take advice. You have to be willing to listen to advice and park it in a part of your brain where you may not be able to use it right now, but later on you can. I think there was a shot that like Duke Brian Tarragon, I watched him throw when I was younger, and I could never get it, but I would keep practicing. I talk about practicing, and eventually I threw it a couple of times. I was like, oh, it was like 5 or 6 years later, trying out this shot before I could get it. Now everybody else throws it way better than me, but it was one of those things that was my bane. But you have to be willing to do the work to get to where you're at, so I think that's true more so in SCA than anywhere, because hard work can get you. I don't believe in trying to get awards and doing a checkbox kind of thing for it. I believe that doing what you do is its own reward, but you get recognized for it. But I mean, we have to be honest with each other. A lot of people, when you start fighting, you're like, yeah, I want to be a knight. That's a good goal to have. There's nothing wrong with it. And the same thing can be true. It's like, man, it'd be really cool to be a pelican, or I want to be a laurel, or I want to be a master of defense. All those people, it's not a checkbox, but you have to be willing to do what it takes to be those things. You have to be charismatic. You have to be have a good character. You have to have skills. So all those things, they're doable for anybody out there. You just have to be willing to pay the work, and I keep telling myself that. I started in on my doctorate here recently, so I'm working on my third top of the level of the food chain thing. But it's the same mindset. It doesn't matter what you do, whether it's SCA, whether it's career. If you want to put in the work, you might be able to get there.
Right. It's about the pursuit of excellence and making priorities and investment of your time and energy to what you want, right? And you can say you want it, but until you invest your time and focus and attention and all of that, you're not working for it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. It has to be fun. Everything has to, you have to have joy in what you do.
Right. You said something though about being charismatic, and I think that is something that throws some people, because in the society has a lot of introverted people who don't feel charismatic, and
right.
how do you teach that?
I
get
think
over yourself and talk.
you encourage it. No, you encourage it by making people comfortable. And when people are comfortable, they open up a lot more. So if I'm inviting, and I invite people to come with us or go visit a camp, and I want to hear their stories of the day, and whatever it might be, when an introvert feels comfortable and in a safe place, we can have some pretty amazing conversations. And it can be small group, or it can be a bigger group. I'm not saying you have to jump out and sing at a bardic. But you can tell a story about what happened and what you liked that day at the end of the day, no matter who you are. And I think just enjoying other people's company, a smile goes a long way. And just, you can't be a Mimi. You have to let others have time in the limelight. And that's more of a leadership role and trait, is making sure that all the people that are doing the work get recognized. As a crown or as a baron or whatever, you don't need any of that stuff. You already have it. It's your job to dispense opportunities for leadership, play to people's strengths, let them be successful in whatever role you give them, and grow people. I think when I first moved to Ansteorra, I moved down to Austin, which has a great group of people. And one of my goals was I wanted to have, I said, we need to have at least 10 chivalry members at our practice here. And they looked at me like, what in the hell are you talking about? We only have maybe 6 if they all show up. And I'm like, that's right. So we got to get to work training some people so we can make some knights, so we have more knights at our fighter practice. And lo and behold, we had, all of a sudden, a lot of the knights were coming from that area, and they would come in for practices, and a whole bunch of young guys got better because, as knights, it's your duty to teach and train and kind of help them on the path. It didn't matter whose squire was whose squire, whose knight was whose knight. We worked with anybody, no matter who they were. And we just had, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but a role of a bunch of people, that got knighted and got better, and got knighted and got better. And so I think that was good. I know that in the Outlands, they talk about Duke City down in Albuquerque. When I was young growing up, you would go down there to go and fight the big dogs. And then for a time it flipped, so it was like myself, Bela, and Malguin. The 3 of us had several reigns kind of in that area, and Conan as well. So there was a while when the North was really good for several reigns, and then it changes again. And that's true with a lot of kingdoms, where you have one area that might dominate for a while, and it's usually because of the work that's done at the practices. And I know, I think in Ansteorra, like Dallas has a lot of great people because they have some really good fighter practices. Phoenix has a lot of great people because they have great fighter practices. And I think that's true in a lot of places, but you hear of these places and you want to go there just to work with those people. And even if it's for an afternoon or for whatever, it's a very magical time, fighting against these people that are like legends, and you're like, oh, I'm just a peon, and they're kind of coaching you in some things of what to do. And I can remember now Duke Rorik down in Albuquerque, one of my first trips down there, and I don't think he might not have been knighted yet at that time, or maybe he was just knighted, but he had to talk with me and said, hey, stop being so nervous about fighting all these other people. I've watched you fight before. Just get out there and have some fun. And then it was like, oh, okay. And then it was like, okay, now I'm learning. I'm not worried about how I'm doing. I'm more focused on figuring out what I'm doing right or what I'm doing wrong, and how to get to the next step. And then it became very enjoyable. And I think and then that leads to, when you're there, you go to other kingdoms and you seek out other people, and you see all these people that do a lot of pickups. I like melee a lot more, so I don't spend as much time on the pickup field. There's been a couple of exceptions to time. Sometimes I do that at Gulf Wars in Australia, when you only get a chance to fight those people at that time. That's the only time we come out, so we spend extra time out there on those days. But I think it's just as much importance of building relationships with people beyond the field, and taking care of people, and meeting with them later and talking about, I really liked it when you did this, and introducing other people to some of those people, taking your squire to go fight that guy. Hey, go fight this guy and tell me what you think. And you start building those relationships where people start sending people your way. Hey, I got this guy I want you to fight, and then next thing you know, like 3 years later, that person's a duke, and I guess it went well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's sort of the key, right? Is you got to relax and like park your ego on the side and go out there and just learn and be able to laugh at yourself and not worry about being judged or looking foolish, right? Because when you start worrying about that, you aren't having fun and you aren't
Right.
making relationships, right?
I think that's a critical part. I mean, and people have said if you're not having fun, do something different. And it's not inaccurate, but it's not always, you don't necessarily have to do something different, like switch to a different field. Like you don't have to go to equestrian. It might be just changing your mindset, not worrying so much about you know what the expectations are, who's watching me, who, you know, oh my gosh, you can get so tied into knots worrying about stuff like that. If you're out there and you're just having fun, it's not going to matter. People are going to like being with you. They're going to like fighting with you because you're out there smiling. You're not getting mad if you hit him. You know, you're laughing because, oh my God, I can't believe you hit me there. I could have swore I had that blocked, you know. So I think those kind of conversations are more important than you know, your win loss or whatever. I think it's more important to have good character and have a good, and remember that it's a game. Holy cow. Remember that it's a game.
Right. And
I'm like
that
fifth
you,
level now.
yeah, and you're not, and people aren't always judging you, right? Like it's not what it's about. But so we
They
didn't talk
do,
about
it's
you.
just different ways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we didn't talk about you
Go ahead.
raining almost at all. You want to talk about like your favorite part of raining?
um, I think there's a couple things that really stand out. You know, that moment in the Outlands, you know, they do fealty, you know, where you have the landed nobles, then you have, you know, the knights and the pelicans, and as they come forward, but they do the populace, you know. So, and not, they don't do that everywhere, but the populace comes up to swear fealty. And I'll be honest with you, there is nothing more humbling than watching everyone at an event stand up and come forward. It's like this giant green mob coming towards you, and you're like, holy cow, you know, that's a lot of people that believe in what we do. But it's probably one of the most powerful things is that we are one, we are a team, and we all are going to help each other out. I think that part's cool. Marching out, marching out onto the battlefield at Estrella as the Outlands going to the broken. Oh my gosh, you know, you got the drummers going, and it is, you're just, you can't, you're like, you're jumping out of your skin from just all of the emotions that are around of just, I get to be a part of this team, you know. And I'm like the team captain for now. So just what people do for each other and what we can do for them, I think giving recognition to those people that are deserving. I think everybody will tell you that, man, giving those AOAs to the people that hadn't, you know, been recognized, and even if it's just a little token or a thank you, I think that is what has been good. I think the brotherhood of when you travel, you know, to different places and you want to take care, when you're a host, take care of people. There's just so many things, you know, of being crowned, that it is really a chance to take care of your people more than anything else. You know, I think before I was crowned, you know, I had a lot of friends that were crowns and they had won theirs, and I'm thinking, you know, gosh, when I beat that person, you know, by the time you win crown, you have beaten everybody that's won a crown before at some point in time or another, and it's just a matter of putting things together, you know. So it was like, okay, that person that I beat from this kingdom is now, they just won crown, okay, this person, you know. And so you can get it in your head and it gets you a little bit sideways, but if, as long as you're having fun, it doesn't really matter, you're going to get there eventually, you know. And that's exactly how it worked for me. It wasn't important, but then it was cool when it did, because a lot of my friends were all crowned or had been crowned, and so the circle that I ran around with was, from Denver and that part, a lot of people had done that. So I'm like, okay, I'm a little late to the party, but that's okay. I've always been a little bit slow learner, being a little bit older, I guess, um, but I think being crowned is just, I took that so seriously about making sure I took care of people every day. You were on the phone and making sure you had award recognition. So like we went straight from being Baron and Baroness of Carita, which is Denver, right into being that first crown. And so between that as a Baron and Baroness and being crowned both reigns, every award that we gave, and it was plenty, we had a scroll ready to go. So there wasn't like, hey, we're going to do this and we'll catch up with you later kind of thing, because we really combed the area before we ever went there, and we had plenty of extras just in case. And I think the Outlands with the Scribal Guild and what they do there, it was all original scrolls. And I didn't realize that wasn't true in other places, but everything was original. It wasn't a photocopy that someone colored in. And you'll be proud of me. I just finished my first scroll. So can I show you?
Yeah, definitely.
Hang on a second. So I just finished. I don't know if you can even see. It looks like it's carved from stone.
Yeah.
It's an archery championship. So it's got this stuff here written in here, and it's all carved, but it's from house insulation foam.
Oh.
So it's super duper light, and you can so it'll be fun. Well, it's my very first one, so it's something that was different. So I've been wanting to do that for such a long time, and now that I had like an extra 30 hours. It's amazing how much time people spend on those things.
That's why I think it's amazing
to do that. So
yeah, that the Outlands does all original scrolls is amazing.
Yeah, I think and then there were a ton. It's like an army just of scribes, of people. We would give out assignments and they would part it out to everybody. And they were so organized, and we never once had an issue. And I don't know how many years that is total with, from Baron, Baroness to crown, without them ever missing a beat. So, kudos to all those people that can do all that stuff. I hope that I can give a little bit more back still. Now that I'm older, and I don't know, I'm slowing down quite a bit. So I say.
Or because we can't go to events on weekends, we all have this little bit of extra time to figure out new projects, right?
Yeah, in theory, that's totally true. I think for me, it's still a lot of work, a lot of school. I have 4 kids, so that does a lot of. I'm like a soccer dad too, so I think that's kind of changed my lifestyle significantly.
Yeah, I only have one, and she likes D&D, so that's all Dad.
That's cool. All 4 of mine like it.
Yeah.
So when I have time, sometimes we call it a little game.
Do you do other art besides the scribal stuff?
Yes, but not. I haven't really applied it in the right way. Like this is kind of like an application of, like I like to build. I know this is my total geeky side, but D&D terrain and stuff like that. So I've got some massive things that I built, and so it's kind of taken that to apply to. So I'm willing to do that for some scroll work. I've done a lot of costuming. I can sew. Like I took a class as senior in high school of independent living, where I learned how to sew and how to cook, and those have been the best things for me ever. So I did a lot of sewing competitions. It's been a while, but I do okay on that. I make some pretty cool stuff.
That's cool.
But I'm nowhere near as good as most people, but I can get by.
I think
I made a really
thinking of,
nice pirate costume.
oh, that's cool. Do you have like a pirate party?
Technically, it was my Red Baron costume, but yes, as a matter of fact, we did in the Outlands, of
Yeah,
course,
we had one too.
at
in
Ansteorra. Yeah, we put up blue tarp and built shark fins, and we had a plank that you had to walk to get in, and
That's
it was a
cool.
good time.
Yeah, ours was called the Dirty
So
Pirate Hooker Party. So mostly women.
you might have
Anyway,
had some different things at your party that we did not have.
yeah, yeah, it might have been different. Did you bring your sword or not?
I did.
Okay,
I did. It looks pretty bad though.
all right, that's cool.
But okay, let me back up a little bit. It's still held together. Usually mine are pretty broomy by the time I get to the end, but this one's holding out pretty good. But it's just shaved strapping tape, and then duct tape, and then a little thin line for your cutting line on the edge. I think this one has what do you call these things?
Lanyard.
Where you wrap it around your hand. Lanyard, thank you. Some of mine have had triggers. And this one is, I think, one of the Balder baskets. But I have metal ones. I have a wide variety. The only thing that they really have in common is they're about the same length. And so I think I had to find a yardstick because I couldn't find my anything. So I think it's 39 inches is where I'm at.
I was gonna say.
So, and I have long arms too. So yeah.
Do you have a
So
stretching tip?
I mean, I don't have Rothgar arms, but I can do a lot. And so I think I'm deceptively fast. Like they think there's this old guy who, and then it's okay. But I think it's the ability to hit small spaces by changing your arm angle and having one shot equal about 15. It really is. So that and moving, I think moving your opponents where you are. I have a Madu, but I don't know how to top spike anybody. I usually use it just as a feint most of the time. So, but most of my joy has been, on the melee field with 9-foot spear. I think that's where I have more skill in that than I do in with a sword. I'm okay with the spear.
All right. Can I ask you a question about your cloak? Is the butterfly part of your device?
Yes. I think my knight had this really cool, we called it bird armor, that kind of was a sash piece that kind of went across and it looked like wings of a bird and it was really cool. So I kind of wanted to have something like that. So I built butterfly armor. So it started, my first set had a wing and the body was on the side. So the wings came around up to the shoulder and down. And then now, the last set I built, and I probably need to replace it, but it was just more of a body belt with a bunch of copper and brass with jewelry cut work on it. I wish I should have brought them in here. But it's pretty cool with butterflies. So I had these butterfly plates around 2 here and 2 in back, and I didn't fight in a lot of armor. I found as you get better, you need less armor because you have learned how to block.
Right. Yeah.
Something about that blocking that really helps.
It really does.
I started out as a butterfly, and it's kind of neat. It's like my name. I picked my name at my very first event that I went to, and so it was Johann and Monica's coronation, and someone asked me, "What's your name?" And I said, "It's Todd." And they're like, "What? No, your SCA name." I'm like, "What's that?" And they explained to me what it was. I'm like, "Oh, okay. My name is Hoegaarden," because at the time, my last name is White, and Hoegaarden White was my favorite beer. So I named myself after a beer, and I'm the only one with that name. So if someone says it, there's not another one. And I got all this cool swag that I can wear with my name on it. Like I got this nice beer cooler sash that I can take out and all sorts of different things.
I love that. That's great. What color Duke are you? What do they call you?
Oh, I am the Duke d'Or because Rothgar was already the Golden Duke, and they were running out of colors, and I wore black and gold, so it was either black and gold or something silly. I think realistically, most people call me the Butterfly Duke, but I do have an official color, you know, and I think it's a neat tradition. That just, it's funny when you're like, that's one of the coolest things, like, oh man, now I get to pick a color, and people are like, man, I better get mine before you so I can get that color, because I can remember that, like, Conan, I think, got his before Malvin got his, so he was the black and blue Duke, and they both had the same exact colors, but it turned out okay because Malvin, he ended up being the plaid Duke. You know, because he had a nice kilt that he sometimes fought in, and it worked out okay. I mean, I guess I feel bad for some of the people later on, but they've been pretty creative. I mean, in the beginning, I think it might have been easy, not so much at the end. I think you're really running out of trying to be a little bit more creative. We
I
had to
think
go
it's
from
cool
things
that you
other
guys
than
do that.
colors, like
Well,
it is. I
Kayla
think
is
it's one
like
of
the
those
bone
neat
Duke,
things.
right?
Yeah, the Bone Duke, and I'm like, oh, okay,
It's
because
kind of
I think
cool.
that he was yeah, he was crowned before me, and then he won a second one after me, I think. So I don't think I got to see. I left shortly after my reign. I came to Texas, so I was probably about maybe 3 or 4 months after our reign ended. So I didn't get to see a lot of the stuff that happened after I left, other than just hearing about it. And I think that was before a lot of social media. So it was kind of like, oh, I heard so and so did okay. But now I can catch up on everybody, and we can kind of see what's going on. And this has been very helpful to, kind of sit and chat with a lot of people and hear people's story.
This in YouTube, like, the world is just so much smaller. So, okay. So you ready for your final 10?
Yes, I think so.
All
I've been
right.
studying, and
Okay.
I wrote cheat notes.
What event have you never gone to that you would like to go to?
Ooh, what event have I never gone to that I'd like to go to? I would like to go out to like the Caid West, or I'd like to go out and stay. I want to go out to Castle Kirk. I want to go hang out with Duke Guy at his castle. I don't know if it's an event or not, and I don't even care. I just want to go hang out there because he's such an awesome person. And I think that would be fun. But I've heard a lot of good stuff, and I've met a lot of people from there. But of all the places, I've usually gone and visited them in their home, and I haven't had a chance to do that out that direction. So I think that would be fun. Either that or Sport of Kings. I haven't done that. So going up to Ansteorra, there are a lot of great people up there too. I've met some fantastic people from up there. So there's a lot of good places to still go yet.
Guy's castle looks incredible. I want him to do like a tour, like I just think it would be amazing. But anyway. All right. If you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
Okay, so I thought a lot about this one, and I would like to fight, and I have to put an asterisk on this one because I would have liked to fought people when I was probably in better shape. But Alanon is someone that I fought him so many times on the melee field, spear fighting, but I've never fought him other than that. And he fights such a different style. Like, I'm like, I don't know how I'm thinking there's got to be at least 14 different ways he would kick my ass. Way more than a normal person, because he's up on his tippy toes and he throws shots from different angles. And I'm watching, I'm like, I don't even know how I would react because everything is coming from such a different angle. So I'd like to fight him. And this is going to sound really dumb, but I've not fought Sven in Ansteorra. We have fought side by side countless times. And when he was crowned once at Gulf, when he got the itch to do pickups, he would send me out. You need to go do a pickup with him because I want to do a pickup with him, and I can't do that because I'm doing all my things. So I was like his little errand boy that would go and fight pickups for a day. Thank God I did okay. And I fought a lot of his guys, but we've fought side by side, I don't know how many times, but never against each other. So I think that would be fun. But I'm getting up there in the age, so I don't know. I wouldn't be able to do a whole lot other than, it would be like a Pell with one bad wheel, maybe something like that.
He's a super fun fight. I think you'd have a super fun time fighting.
He's a fun guy too. I met him the very first time, and we hung out, and it was like, oh, okay. And so I said, when he was crowned, I'm like, oh, I'm thinking about coming out to Gulf Wars, but I don't have a tent. And I said, I'm willing to do work for whatever. And so I got to stay in the cabin, and then that's what I was. I was his henchman for the war, and whatever he needed, we took care of. So it was nice for him to get that, and it was nice for me because I didn't have to try and pack a tent, for something. That I didn't know. I hadn't been to a war in a little bit, and it worked out really, really well.
I got to do that for a king once. He called me like his official sparring partner, and I got all the great fights for the whole reign. It was awesome. That's a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your favorite Gulf Wars story?
Oh, Gulf War story?
Or what's your favorite?
I told
story?
you 2 of those.
Yeah.
My favorite what?
Well, my question's really a Pinzik story, but you don't seem to be like a Pinzik person. So
I did Penzik, a couple of times. I did it once as a brand new person and once as a crown, and those were good. But I think Penzik, Estrella, or Gulf, it's all the same. I think maybe one of the cool things we did at Estrella, it was Duke Malwin, Duke Conan, and I, on one of the battles, we decided we were going to go out and we were going to kill their king. That's what we were going to do. And it was Jono of Atenvelt that year. And so he's a good guy. And so we were like kind of trying to figure out where they're at and everything else, and kind of wading our way, engaging and disengaging until we can figure out. And he's got a pretty sizable royal guard with him. And then it's like Malwin goes flying in, and he's super fast, and he's a lefty, and it was like blam, 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 and he took out some guardsmen, and eventually they all protect the king. And Conan was right behind him and came the other direction, and he's like, oh, and he got close, and and then they took him. And then there was me with a 9-foot spear who just kind of went bonk. And he's like, what was that? I'm like, it's Hoagie. He goes, oh, damn, Hoagie. All right, nice shot. Because it's that moment where you're like, here I am fighting off all these bad guys, and then there's that right between his guard. They were all being defensive, and it was just one of those, got your nose kind of things. But I think those kind of things make it fun to talk about later. I think another time at Gulf War, we were holding the fort in that little gateway, and in Ansteorra there. I apologize, I can't remember his name, but yeah, he was a gentleman that fought in a wheelchair, so he was my shieldman to hold the gate. I'm like, okay, tell me what you need. He goes, all right, here's what's going to happen. You need to put your foot on the bar in the back so that I don't go tipping over, and I'll just turtle up, and they won't be able to get me out of this place. And I'm like, lo and behold, I kept my foot on that back bar, and they kept coming because you have unlimited reses. So he's just turtling up, like just slamming all the time, and we're surviving and getting people off and surviving. And I bet it was, I don't know, a dozen or more column charges before we finally tipped over. I think my foot fell off the back of his bar, but but he was an amazing guy, you know, and just some of those things that you're like, people, you just don't expect that. But you're like, okay, I'm in, whatever you need, you know. So there's so many of stories that are like that, of just having a good time, you know, fighting and laughing about it later. Sometimes we do dumb things. Sometimes um, it's okay. I mean, there's other times, like there was one time on a Gulf War bridge battle that I put together a team of spearmen, and there was three of us and a shieldman, and we would filter in, and then when we got tired, filter back out and filter in, and then in about 5 minutes, you know, you take a break and then you come back, and we ended up, I think we killed like a kingdom and a half between our team when we would go back out there, just because it was, you would refresh, you know. And then and after a while everybody caught on, and it's kind of cool when you get the other side cheering for you, you know. And I've been on the other side of that too. But when they're sending shieldmen over to knock you off the bridge, and you're just cross-checking and coming back, and it's just, you're in a zone. As a crown, this is funny, as a crown at Estrella, I can remember I had died in a battle already, and I'm sitting on top of the hay bales watching it, and all of a sudden there's this movement through the lines, and it's Casca, and he's lifting his leg, and it's almost as if Sauron is fighting in the movie, and he's moving, and people are just flying when he's wading through, and we're out there, I'm the crown, cheering for an Atenvelt guy because it's just so cool. And it was just one of those moments when people just get on a roll, and you just loved, I mean, you're just like, oh, that was one of the coolest things ever. So, and Costable's, he's very lovable too, so it's easy. But you know, those kind of moments, everybody has them now and then, you know. And you hear poems and stories and stuff about those kind of things. Those are always good stories to pass down and say, well, yeah, sometimes you're on the receiving end of those stories. Sometimes you get to be on the good guy side.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
I guess that's a couple stories.
Yeah. All right.
I think I'm full of them.
You are. Who are your favorite people to watch fight?
Favorite people to watch fight. I think that there are some pretty amazing people out there. Oh my gosh, I'm all of a sudden having a blank. I can remember, and this came up in one of the stories that you early on, one of your early interviews. We were at a Penzic, and it was a champions battle, and there was a gentleman out there that was fighting, and he was a knight, and he was fighting clean, and it was beautiful, and we were all kind of cheering for him. And then he got out into the finals, and you know, I don't know how many times he hit that guy that he was fighting, but eventually he got hit and he took the shot, and everybody went out and congratulated the guy that got second, because they knew in their hearts that he was the one that had probably won. Realistically, in everyone's hearts, that's what had happened. But you get to see those beautiful fights from people. Uther's a unique fight. He's a bigger guy. But I think there's just so many people that are just, you're like, oh my goodness. I think in the Outlands, Hrothgar has a different fighting style. I like Duke Malgwin. I didn't find anybody that ever fought that was faster than him, and very gracious. So there's a lot of people I just like watching fighting. I'll watch YouTube videos every now and then. You know, you watch those, you know, from like watching the ones from like the very first crown of the Outlands, and you're like, oh my gosh, how do they have video from that? And I can't even find anything from mine. And it was like in the 2000s. But yeah, there's plenty of people to go and research, and you're like, oh my gosh. And I've had a chance to fight against plenty of those people that it's just you're fighting them. They're like, oh, that was beautiful. I don't know how you did that, and I want to learn how to do that. But I think that helps.
Yeah. All right. Do you have a hero in the SCA? And if so, who is it?
I don't know if I have a true hero. I have a lot of heroes. Um, I think people that have kind of shown the way how to do some things and how to be gracious. Um, Elisheva was a pretty neat lady from the Outlands. One of the Duchess. She was always looking out for the fighters and always looking out for the young guys. So it's not necessarily heroes that are fighters, but heroes that have led per se. I think there have been great friends. I think Duke Basil of Artemisia was always very gracious and trying to be hospitable when a bunch of hoodlums from the Outlands showed up, and he and Sean kind of welcomed us all, and we ended up forging a great bond, and so there's a lot of little heroes in there. I think I try not to put people up on this really high pedestal, because sometimes real world is out there, and it's different. I have so many people that I absolutely love and I love spending time with. My list could be really long, but I don't think I have anybody that I just really, except for maybe Rothgar. That guy's really good looking, and he's been around for a long time. I don't know how he does it.
He's kind of like an SCA
He might be
superhero.
my man crush. Yeah, someone shared a picture a while. I never could find it, but it was a picture of me talking to Rothgar, and I have this puppy dog love look, and just looking at him. It's hilarious.
That is funny.
But he was always steady, and and I thought fair and listen. So there's a lot of people that have influence here and there. Across kingdoms, just a lot of different people that I absolutely love. Calantier's got a bunch of great people as well. And the middle has some fantastic people. I mean, everywhere you go, there's good people, and it's kind of hard to keep track of everybody. I just think you just love people for who they are.
Yeah, I think that's true. If you had to recommend one event in your kingdom for someone out of kingdom to go to, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. I don't even know if I know the answer to that. It used to be in Austin, a guy by the name of Richard Garriott, who kind of invented online gaming, had some land there. And we kind of call it SCA Disneyland when we used to go out there, but there's like a 3/4 scale globe theater. There's a pirate ship. There's a castle. There's so many different things, and it's right on the water, on the lake. And it was, it had all these little cabins. Some of them were in trees, and he would open up the tavern. And so, and you have someone who is so hospitable. I mean, and he would break out stuff that you would, in your lifetime, you would never, like we had, we drank some port that was from 1920. We would have just these crazy different things that you would never be able to experience in your lifetime. And he made those available to just everybody that, just, hey, come try this, and so that was a neat place. And I don't know if that even, I think he may have sold the land, and so that's unfortunate. But as far as an event goes, I don't know. It's been a while since I've been to a bigger one here. Usually, It's been stuff that's been local, so that wouldn't be really fair.
Okay.
I don't know if I can answer that question very good.
Okay.
Someone else from here would probably be better at it.
Well, I'm going to talk to His Royal Majesty Jason tomorrow, so I'll ask him.
Yeah, that's probably a good person to ask because he'll give you all the up-to-date stuff. I know the older stuff because I'm older, but I think he's probably going to help you out.
Yeah. What book do you think everyone on the path to knighthood should read?
Mm. I don't know. I like, I don't know. I don't know if this is a good answer or not. I like The Once and Future King by T.T. White, which is what they made the Sword in the Stone Disney movie out of. I think that's pretty easy reading. Either that or the Knights of the Round Table, which is like the young adult, where it talks about it section by section of all the different knight stories. Um, those are kind of something different that people would not necessarily recommend. Other than that, um, maybe some leadership books that have nothing to do with chivalry, just how to be a good leader and how to be a good person. There's a lot of good stuff in that vein that you know I would kind of direct somebody to if that's what they wanted to be, just how to work with other people as a team. If you want to be a crown, you should probably read some leadership books.
Agreed. What is your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
I'm going to go with Deathstalker 2 because no one else has.
Okay.
It's the old Roger Corman ones where he uses the same exact scene in like 4 different movies. And I don't know, for the longest time, I had almost every DVD that had a sword in it somewhere. And I thought it was just so horrible that I loved it. So I mean, realistically, there's a lot of other ones that everybody else is going to name off, but I think that's that one that no one else is ever going to name because they're too embarrassed. But I like it.
All right. What do you
So
think
I
is the
think
most?
it's got the horrible song and it starts out, "I'll get you" and Deathstalker 2, and then nah, nah, nah. So it's good.
I'm gonna have to check it out. What do you think is the most important trait to become a successful fighter?
Listening.
Listening. Okay.
I think you'd have to be able to hear what people say and not ignore it. But um, I think it's hard to get anywhere without without being able to listen to the advice that you're going to get on the way. And I think listening and then joy, you have to have joy. And you can be a great fighter, having a good time and maybe never be a knight, but you're always going to love what you're going to do, whether you're a knight or a not. But I think you have to like what you do. If you're if you're not having a good time, I don't know, you're on a different path, and I think you need to do a sidestep or something to make sure that you get some happiness in what you're doing. Because I mean, I've seen so many people that they get on almost like a grind, or I've heard people talk about, oh, I'm on this, I'm going to go to all these events and push for knighthood, and I'm like, I don't even understand what that means. Push, just be yourself and have fun, and I think that's what you need, as opposed to being so focused on trying to win as many tournaments as you can over the next 4 months. Because if you're getting frustrated because you weren't successful, then I don't want to hang out with you so much.
Yeah.
But if
So
you're
instead of
laughing the whole time and you're finishing fifth, we're hanging out for sure.
so more of a magical mystery tour instead of a push for knighthood.
I'm a different. I think it should all be fun,
Yeah.
and I'm not as serious. I'm not. I mean, I'll train hard and I'll work hard because I know the price that needs to be paid, and you're willing to pay it. But you can do your work and still enjoy it. You can smile and you can laugh while doing whatever. I mean, we all do dumb stuff. Why not have a good time with it?
Right. Right. You gotta figure out a way to make the process fun for you and to fall in love with it, I think. Um, for anything.
It
not
makes
just
it easier.
Yeah, it sure does. It makes life a lot more enjoyable. So, well, I want to thank you very much for doing this and participating and all of your time and stories. It was super fun. Now I want to meet you in person, so I maybe golf wars next time.
I'll have to, I'll have to come out more often, you know, when I get a chance. And I do appreciate everything that you're doing. I know you say you thank us, but I know that all of the people who are participating, we absolutely love the work that you're doing to kind of bring everything together and share some of those stories and talk, you know, talk about a lot of good people. There's so many wonderful people out there, you know, and kind of hear maybe like you talked about, a different person's perspective, you know, of a different thing. There's just amazing people out there all the time. So
Really
I think it does make it a lot more fun. And, you know, in this time now when we really can't spend time together as much as we'd like, this has been fantastic. You know, I try and get on when I can, you know, when I'm trying to read to all my kids at bedtime and then quickly get on to see what I missed. And I've been able to get on a bunch, and they are very enjoyable. And I appreciate everything that you're doing.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really enjoying getting to meet a lot of people, and I'm hoping when events start again that this will make all of the Ducal people more approachable, and it could be like, oh my God, that's the guy that you know has butterflies and did whatever, and that's the guy that chased the turkey or whatever. So,
right, and you'll have to go on tour so you can meet everybody. That's going to be the big thing for you, is you got to get out there and visit everybody. Or you can just get us all to go at one place. It'd be easier, you know, if we all picked one spot to go.
Heart of Kings 2021. You guys can all come out.
Maybe.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us. And tomorrow, His Royal Majesty Jason. So that'll be fun too. See you all later. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.